I want to start out this afternoon by introducing Ben. You've had a chance to see him up on the screen, but Ben here. Side. Come on. Ben closer. Oh, right now he's doing a stretch, but that's exactly what I was going to ask him to do. So Benny, bow. Bow. Oh, that wasn't good enough. Bow. His stretch was better than his bow, but we're going to go with that. And I would like to also introduce my sister Shirley, and my brother-in-law Bill is back at the book table. So, okay, Ben under. Whoops, go through. Yeah. Well, I would like to start out today by saying that tomorrow is my birthday. And my birthday for almost my entire life has been a time when I would choose to challenge myself. It was like a marcation or just a time that I could look forward to do something I'd never done before, push myself. And I remember the year when I was 28, I pushed myself to go from my house in Tirasana, riding my bike down to and around all of Mission Bay, and then back to Tirasana again. It was 20 or 25 miles. It was the furthest I had gone. It had some hills in it, and I was feeling very, very proud of myself. And on my list for future birthdays, I wanted to go white river rafting. I wanted to go in a hot air balloon. I just had plans. Then came my 29th birthday. And my challenge for that birthday was to try and lift my shoulder a little. I had broken my neck at C4, 5, and 6, which is right at the neck level. 5 allowed me to be able to get some movement back in this arm. 4 is just a little bit of a shrug on this side. So my next goal became just to be able to try and touch my nose. Big difference there. So what I'd like to talk about then here is this quote that I have up here. It's one that I'm not going to read these to you unless somebody needs me to do that. But this is one of those quotes that I found in the last 35 years that really, sometimes I feel like I can't say what I really believe or what I mean, and then I find a quote and I think, yeah, that speaks to my heart or to my life. And I had all kinds of plans on how life was supposed to be. I had all kinds of little girl plans about, my wedding and my kids and my house and my career. And that's just not the way it was supposed to be for me. So when something catastrophic happens in somebody's life, I hear people saying all the time, I couldn't do that, or I wonder what I would do. In knowing that you just wake up and an instant later you're paralyzed from the neck down. In fact, at the beginning, the only thing the doctor said I would have is to be able to move my eyelashes. I was in a halo cast which went around my head and attached to my body, so my neck was all straight, couldn't move. And I was in that for 3 or 4 months. So there was a lot to think about, wondering whether or not, what I would be able to do and what I'd be able to continue. What I really learned is that people don't really change in a catastrophic type incident or event. Their personalities stay the same. If you're outgoing, you're going to stay outgoing. If you're type A or type B personality, you pretty much keep that. It's not always the same with a head injury. That personality may come back at some time, but usually immediately it hasn't. So I have tried to tell people that there are some things that are going to be natural. We need to grieve, need to learn to grieve, some of us. We need to have that pity party for ourselves, but then we need to come out of the depression that it might put us into, because the danger is in letting the event define who you are, letting the event dictate what the rest of your life is going to be. So that's why I've called this moving from victim to victor. I want to show you, I'm putting this in a little different order, so are you following me for the slide 4? I feel like all of the growth I needed at the very beginning was just stretching me beyond anything that I had done. Even though I couldn't move myself, my body, I had to learn so much about what it meant to be quadriplegic and what it meant to just recognize parts of my body and what it could do and not do. And so I'll be talking a little bit more about that as I move ahead. What I'd really like to do is talk about the difference between victim and victor, and go from there. My goal today is to give you some steps in moving from one to the other. And I know that you have not necessarily had some big tragic event in your life, but you may have, or someone you know may have. I'm going to give you a few ways to step into my story, because it doesn't have to be becoming paralyzed to be able to use the steps I want to share today. So just to tell you a little bit about who I was ahead of time. After my accident in 1978, it's been a while, 35 years now, took me about 4 years to feel like I needed to go to a counselor. Wasn't angry with God. I had a very strong faith. I didn't feel like I really needed help until I realized that I was having very difficult body issues. I had a lap tray on that was solid wood, so I couldn't see the bottom half of my body. Couldn't work anyway. And I saw myself, we used to watch Star Trek in those days in the 70s, and I saw myself as that head on a box. I knew that my head worked, my brain worked, my mouth worked, but that's all I felt like. So I decided to go see a psychologist about that, and on my way, my husband told me that he wanted a divorce. So this was 4 years after the accident. I thought if anybody was going to last, he was the man that could do this, but not so. Kind of shows you where I lost touch too during that time, that 4 years. And I found that between the divorce, everything else started spiraling downward as well. My health, I started getting a lot of bladder infections. I realized if he was leaving, I was going to need to find more attendant care than I had already. I left the hospital being addicted to Valium, not because I wanted to, but they told me to choose between Valium, marijuana, and alcohol. So it was my drug of choice because they thought I'd have phantom pains and difficulty just getting back into society. I felt that with the number of things that had started to go downward, I was having trouble getting the right kind of wheelchair, the right kind of attendant, the right kind of everything, that at this point I was about as much of a victim as anybody could be. I started going to my counseling lessons, and Dr. Laverty is the one, she's here in La Jolla, is the one that really told me what a victim was and pointed out how much I was living that life. Because every week that I went in there, there would be more and more problems. And it's like every week I came up with something more. So some of the things that I feel I learned from that is you feel sorry for yourself. You know, I wasn't the one, well, actually, I was the one that was driving during this accident, but everything else that was happening to me just seemed like it wasn't fair. I could blame others, you know, the very first night when my husband left, I had a caregiver that called and said she wouldn't make it. She was in jail, you know, so again, here I was a victim. You start thinking about really all your problems because they're multiple, but you don't think about the solutions. I stayed depressed a lot longer than I should have been. Took me 4 years to get there, but then just having the divorce on top of everything else was the little snap that sent me into that. And I learned through this that you do become as paralyzed in your mind and your spirit as one could in their body. Sorry. First, I want to tell you my favorite feeling about when you're thinking about the victim is when I was in college is the first time I ever heard about the drama queen. And this is something Dr. Laverty kind of pointed out. When you are the person that everything is always wrong, I don't think drama queens really want things to be right. They relish the attention that they're getting and don't really look for solutions. So to me, the drama queen is the epitome of the victim. So in moving to Victor, I feel that it's pretty much the opposite. And especially if you have a strong faith like I do, your life should be hopeful that God's going to lead us in for me to claim that He will give me the strength that I needed to be able to move on. So to move into a hopeful place, to be able to think proactively instead of having something hit me like that attendant that couldn't show up her first night. Well, when you learn to work proactively, then you have a backup plan. And even today, I've ended up having a lot more time in bed recently because of surgery. And if nobody's going to be around me during a day, I've checked with my neighbors just to see who's home, just to see in case I need something, who's there. So I'm always looking ahead for that plan B or C or oftentimes D. A big lesson that I learned, and I'll talk about in a bit, is taking responsibility. You know, I kind of had to learn that Prince Charming wasn't going to show up to come save me, and that I was the one that needed to learn about my own paralysis. I had to learn how to take care of the house and take care of my vans and take care of my wheelchairs and take care of the dog and hire and fire caregivers. But I had to step up to that, to take that responsibility. I'm a really good one now at asking for help. I've learned some of the steps about that and know that people really want to help. They look for, it's a symbiotic relationship, and sometimes you just need to put it out there. But I've learned to be careful. I don't always ask the same person, and I try and ask somebody to do something that they enjoy. So I might ask one person to help me with gardening, and somebody else to help me with a database, somebody else to help with a meal. But I try and choose the people that would enjoy doing those things. You don't wear them out as quickly. And then I think that the victor is, as a victor, or moving that way anyway, this didn't happen overnight. I felt like I had so many people around my church and family and friends that were there for me. And I learned to rely on that instead of being afraid to always be the downer. You know, there's ways to work with the people who are in your community for you. And so that was important to me. Being thankful and showing gratitude has been a really big part of who I am. I learned to journal. I go into that a little bit more. And then the last one is looking for a life that will be meaningful. Different life events that I just want to throw out there as a possibility for each of you to enter into my story. Oftentimes a life event will be around an illness or an accident or something where you might need to learn something new about your body. You need to exercise differently. You need to eat differently. You've just found out you have diabetes. You may not be able to play baseball anymore. So it might be just you had a difficult pregnancy. There's a lot of body issue kinds of things. And just learning your body and being intuitive about what you need. I learned that doctors don't know everything. So we have to take some responsibility in that. And then the second way that I thought about people coming into the story is just random life events. You might lose a spouse, you might having a divorce, you might lose a child, you might have, as I'm looking around the room, you might have teenagers moving back in with you. They may be bringing their kids with them. You may have parents that need to move in or need more of your time. There are a lot of different events in our lives that can throw us kind of into a tailspin. And so I just offer those as ways that you might enter in. My first step in moving from victim to victor is that it needs to be a conscious choice. You have to choose to change. And the change is usually changing your attitude, number one. You might not want those kids moving in or to take responsibility for those parents. You may not want to give up playing tennis, whatever, but you have to choose consciously that you want to change, you want to grow, you want to have a different attitude about where your life is taking you. The piece that just happened on the news recently, I think week before last, the 3 girls that were held for 11 years captive, they have come out and started to speak. And one of the things, they were on world news, that I noticed is that a psychologist had described them as resilient and defined resiliency is having experienced something bad or dreadful, being able to process it, and then being able to move on. And so they talked about one of the girls, the first thing she said was she was so thankful to family and friends and all the people who had been praying for them. Another one said she wasn't going to let her life be defined by this experience. I think the other one had something else, but they all kind of fit into this ability and willingness and desire to change. That oftentimes it can be scary when you're choosing to do something really different. It was scary for me to look ahead at my life, and I think that's a time when, if you do have faith in your life, to be praying for the kind of sustenance and the type of strength that you need to move on. I know the song, Be Not Afraid, I Go Before You Always, was just kind of at the tip of my tongue all the time. When I first, no, not when I first, probably 4 years into it, about the time I was ready to go to counseling, I was realizing that I really questioned my life at this point. I did go back to being a wife, and in 6 months I went back. I had to fight for it, but I went back to my teaching job. But I wasn't the same kind of teacher, and the things that you consider a wife's definition is, I couldn't do a lot of that. And so I started reading Viktor Frankl from the concentration camps. He wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning, and I thought that's what sounds like a good place for me to start because I was looking for meaning. So a couple of my quotes come from him. Okay, my second point that I'd like to make, or step that I'd like to offer, is taking responsibility. I touched on that a little bit, but again, it's realizing that somebody else isn't going to come rescue us. And in many cases, we might not even want that. It feels good to take the responsibility to make changes for yourself and to move ahead and to know that you did it. So taking responsibility was a big part. The area in here was, the hard part for me was knowing that as a single woman with a home and one salary, that all the things that there were to take responsibility for that didn't even have to do with my disability and breaking my neck could be overwhelming at times. And I have a lot of friends that have gotten divorced and kind of went into that single income. And so that was a really big step, but short. The third step is to educate yourself. Now, no matter what it is that is happening, I had to find out for myself the ways my body would tell me that I had a hurt or a pain or something was going on. And I found out that my face might turn red, my nose might get stuffy, I would have an itchy head. Sometimes my fingers twitch, and I learned that my thumb twitching is different than my forefinger twitching, and that's different than my middle finger twitching. So you can imagine the time in really learning, and I felt like a scientist, write something down and figure out what it means. But learning about the parasympathetic nervous system, learning about the word dysreflexia, all those little reactions my body was showing, is called dysreflexia because the connection between the brain and the body is now going through a different route. So all of those things were part of me educating myself. And I know that that as I have friends going through different experiences, I can see them taking a course or getting a new cookbook or just learning. Shirley has shared with me, she has so many food allergies, all that there is to learn about what she can eat, what she can't eat, new recipes, what restaurants are carrying foods that she have. It doesn't have to be some huge life change, but they're all changes, and they all will bring us through, I think, to a healthier life. One of the things that I learned was that I was going to have to be my own advocate. I was going to have to fight. I had to fight to keep my job. I had to fight to qualify for the accessible van that I drive. I had to appeal the state of California for that. I had to go up through the State Department to get my job back. The doctors at the district thought that now my life would be compromised if I went back and worked with students. I needed to work and fight and appeal against insurance companies. So one of my favorite quotes became this one: never allow a person to tell you no who doesn't have the power to say yes. I use that all the time. Eleanor Roosevelt was a very wise woman, and so I needed to add that in there. Okay, another part of supporting yourself and educating yourself is just realizing that it wasn't just a one-time thing for me to learn about my body or learn about what's going on. Just since all this has happened, then I got breast cancer. It was one more thing to learn about. And I get a new design of a wheelchair. or a new design of a van that I learned how to drive myself, one more thing. So that learning keeps going on, and we need to relish that. I remember in the classroom, I thought of classroom learning was, I taught computer classes, but I thought learning in the school was like learning biology or learning a subject like that. But learning how to navigate for yourself, or learning how to, just how to ask for help. I didn't put those in the same category as education for myself. And I realized that anything we learn, it's just all one education. And being here on the university, I know that you probably can take that. Understand that. The action, my fourth step, is action, and this is actually the biggest step because there are so many facets to this. I have a friend also here in La Jolla who, this is her quote in a book she wrote, wishing, waiting, and hoping. That's the language of victims. Those are all passive words. They are not active. If you want things to happen in your life, you have to get moving. And even if it's just one small step. And she was an advocate for me a lot through this time. I've known her for 25 or 30 years. And I found that I just needed to set some goals, small little goals. And one of those first goals for me was choosing to see a counselor. Now, I'm not a person that really likes support groups, but some other people do. We all have different ways. Maybe somebody would go see their minister or just have a best friend they talk to. But for me, Dr. Lavity was a huge help. Leaning on my faith, the people in my church, and my family. I have several members of family down here. I'm lucky. Shirley and Bill used to live in Oregon, but they moved down here after my accident and have been in the same county for a while. I have a nice support group of friends, both from school, from church, from my neighborhood. Living in the same community since '75 kind of makes a nice opportunity to know a lot of people. People who move around a lot may not have as many opportunities, but I think we can all make our own, even if it's a bridge club or some kind of another group of people that you meet with. So for me to take to get started with the counseling and leaning on families was the beginning. I mentioned already about the ability to ask for help and what you need with that. After my counseling sessions, she was down in La Jolla. I would have whoever was driving me. For the first 6 years, I couldn't drive myself. And I would have whoever was driving me take me down by the beach, and I started journaling with a certain kind of pen I can write. And I found that I was just starting out writing what Chris had said because I didn't want to forget. She's giving me advice or ideas or things to think about, and I was sure I would forget those things. But what I realized is that as I finished writing, I always ended in amen. And I never expected that to happen. But to me, it was like a wake-up call that God was right there with me in those counseling sessions and in my journaling afterward, that I thought I was just journaling, but those messages were to God and he was listening. So for me, journaling became a really important part of my healing. Making a list of thanksgivings and blessings. When we're first going through some event, we're not feeling very blessed, and we're not feeling like there's a lot to be thankful for. Once you start just writing a few things down that you could be thankful for, maybe just a few things a week, the list gets easier and easier to make, and it gets longer, and there's so many people who are proponents of that. I know I've read a lot of Oprah's things because she's journaled for years and years, and just seems that that whole piece about being thankful is, I'm almost always reminded how important that is. Another thing that I did, being paralyzed, seemed like a lot of the help that I needed was to help me with my body, with things I couldn't do. So I was always looking for things that would make it easier for me to do things myself. One of the first things I did was have an electric or an automatic front door put in so I could come in and out of my own house. I also learned Spanish. I had learned it 10 years earlier in high school, you know, as much as you learn in high school, but I was having trouble finding good caregivers. But Hispanic women are just, you know, I just was introduced to so many. I have one woman right now who's been with me 29 years, and the other one's been with me 16. That is truly something to be thankful for. But I decided to learn Spanish. 6 years after my accident, I wanted to drive again, and my arm was just getting strong enough. I had been going to therapy because really everything I do was just with this arm. I don't have any movement in my fingers or hands. So to write, I had to take these large muscles up here and teach them how to do fine motor coordination. And so I learned to write that way, and I learned to drive a car. More recently, the book that I brought with me today, I wrote the whole book lying on my back using Dragon Dictate. So that was a new experience for me, but that worked out. So I think that that whole thing about figuring out ways that you don't have to ask somebody for everything, there are ways that we can help ourselves. And then the last one, you probably have figured out already with all my quotes, that I really enjoy using quotes. And I have them posted all over. But affirmations, I found this affirmation. And I loved it. And a lot of people find that affirmations are what you need to get that, get that foot moving and, going in the right direction. So this one I enjoyed. Okay, there are also a couple other kinds of actions that I just want to briefly mention. One is an invisible action. I decided somewhere early on in these 35 years that I wanted to forgive my husband for leaving me. I felt that I had been rejected and abandoned, and I just felt that I was resentful for a long time, and that wasn't helping me. So another action I chose to take, didn't share with that many people, what was to forgive him. And I knew immediately when I finished that prayer, I had no weight on my shoulders. I felt just relieved of it. It was like a miracle feeling, just to be free of that burden of resentment. And then another type of action came to me, and I'm going to call this serendipitous action, because this just happened. I think it was just a gift from God for me. I am not much of a poetry reader. I like to read things that tell you what they're, that you know what you mean. There's a bottom line. I don't like a lot of flowery writing. I don't want to have to guess what the author is trying to say. But one day I just found this poem, and it's called actually Comes the Dawn, and it was written decades ago in South America. Although several Americans have claimed authorship, when I researched, this was a person from South America who wrote it. So this poem, as I read it, it was amazing to think that a man could talk about exactly how I felt about the love. This is just one line that I pulled out, but talk about losing love, that we can't count on love to keep us going, so being a divorced woman was important to me. But the line that I pulled out of it was this one: plant your own garden and decorate your own soul instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers. It's like this bulb went off. You know, I was waiting for somebody else to ask me out to dinner or to bring me flowers. And I read this, and the first thing I did was take all the browns out of my house from when Mike was living there and painted soft colors, and I bought some watercolors and put flowered wallpaper up. And then I moved to the yard and had people helping me. Even now, I know that my budget for flowers is more than it should be on a tight budget, but it's that important to me. I feel like the flowers in my yard are a reflection on how I'm feeling about myself and how I'm leading my life, and I just like to see flowers and butterflies and birds and all those things. But I don't know that I would have realized that without coming across that, that quote. Okay, there are, I just wanted to remind you in taking these steps that that you feel oftentimes like you're taking some steps forward and then something happens and you feel like you're going backwards. It's slow going oftentimes, but you know, you need to just keep on plodding. So I got a card. This wasn't that long ago, but I loved it. On the outside it said 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And on the inside it said, "Are we dancing yet?" And I just thought, you know, it's all in your attitude and your perspective. You can feel like you're slipping backwards, or you can feel like it's just part of the dance, and you can keep on going with that. So I wanted to share that. Okay, the very last step that I want to share with you, and I'm short on time here. I'm not following my own timing, but the last one is probably my most favorite, because once you've gone through all the other steps, the step to discovering joy is the step also maybe to discovering meaning in your life, but it puts everything, you take yourself out of the equation, and things that surround you, things that make you happy, it might be family or kids or part of your job. For me, I found out that flowers was a really big part of what makes me happy. But I think what works even more is when you take yourself, again, out of it, when you find out what makes you happy, and then you offer it to someone else as service, as volunteering, as sharing, in any number of ways. And I find that the things we enjoy are often because we're good at them. They're a gift that God has given us, and I feel like almost any time I'm feeling joy or I see people experiencing joy, that it's always a God thing to me, always right in the middle. This is another San Diego author. She's a photographer and has a website, Jan Phillips. But I'm going to give you a minute just to look at this. It's the best definition I've ever heard of joy. What I especially found in this, I found an organization. Ben is my 3rd service dog, and I was asked to join the organization that he was trained under, and I eventually became president of the board. I couldn't be a dog trainer. That wasn't my skill set, but I could use my organizational skills and things like that to run a board. I learned all about nonprofits, and I found that it took me to the doorstep of others, and I was able to use my voice and my strength and my wisdom in ways that I'd never been called to do before, and I recognized that with this poem. And I want to say that you don't always know what's going to bring you joy. It might not just come walking in through your door, but I've always felt that the more experiences we give ourselves, It's just like when we're young and we're getting badges from Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. You know, I figured out right away that I didn't care about how the table was set and if the bed had hospital corners. I liked getting my horsewoman's badge. You know, so you learn those things about what you enjoy, what you're good at, and I believe that prayers can really come into that. So I'd just like to say that I'm giving you very little time to get back to your jobs, but I'm going to, I want to tell you that you all have a business card and a bookmark, and if you go to my website, there's a place that it's a free download for all the quotes that I've used here today and that are in my book. So if you like me, like I do, like quotes, then you can find those there. I'd like to also show you that I have a very short evaluation there. And there's some pencils. In fact, Christina is going to walk around with the pencils if you would take a minute to do that. You can leave it in the back at the book table. I am going to stay up front to answer some questions or clarify, or if you want to meet Ben up close and personal. The books are on special today for this event. Instead of $13.95 that they are at Amazon or on my website, they're just $10. And the last thing I'd like to say is a free book is you'll find if you look at the back of my business card, one of you will find a number 13, and you are the lucky winner. Yay, all right. Okay, so congratulations.
I thought it was over there.
Okay, and then that very last quote, let's put that back up there. You've probably seen this a lot, but I've just always loved this quote because I just feel like it is about learning the dance. And so I just want to thank you all for being here, giving up your lunchtime, and invite you to come up and talk with me or take care of your snacks, or please stop and browse at the book table with Bill. Thank you.